Hello everybody, happy Tuesday. Thank you for tuning in for this week's video lesson. I want to say that I really appreciate the fact that you are doing this, that you are getting on, that you're watching these videos, and to those of you who are submitting these assignments, one, I'm really enjoying reading them. Even if I haven't given you feedback on yours yet, I will, first of all. And secondly, I'm really enjoying reading the poetry that you are writing. Also, I just want to say that I know that it's really hard a lot of the time to do this stuff without a teacher there. It actually makes me really sad because this is one of my favorite lessons to do when I'm in class. It's actually the one that we're going to do right now. And I really like helping you come up with ideas and helping you write these poems. So I'm sad that we are not there in class able to do them together. I miss you guys a lot. And I can't wait till the fall when you will stop by my room and say hi and we can catch up on stuff. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's lesson. Today is about ode poetry, and I'm about to tell you what odes are. And I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. So, jumping right in, I'm going to define a couple terms for you. The first one, just like I promised, is ode. So, an ode is a poem that praises or honors something. So you are writing it kind of in tribute to something, like you're saying how great that thing is. And I think that right now, more than ever, we need a chance to be positive about something and think about what are the great things in our life, because it can be really easy right now to fall into negativity. The next term is alliteration. So alliteration you might have learned about before in school, but if not, it's when you repeat the same letter or sound at the beginning of words. And we'll jump into this when we look at our first poem and see how this author uses alliteration. But you usually do it to create some sort of an effect for your reader. Like if you used a lot of D sounds, for example, like the dog dug in the dirt, it creates this sort of hard sound to the poem. So in poems, you're not just thinking about the kinds of words that you're using, like what they mean, but also the feeling that the reader gets from it when it's spoken out loud. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the first poem. Our first poem, actually, I keep saying our first poem. It's the only poem we'll do together on this call, but I will be having another poem that I'd like you to read on your own and respond to. So this is the poem we'll do together. It's called Ode to My Socks, which may seem sort of strange, but it's a pretty famous poem by a pretty famous poet named Pablo Neruda, and it was translated by Robert Bly. So we're going to read it in English, obviously, because I'm not that great in any other language. We're going to go ahead and just read through it first, and then we'll go back and annotate it. Mama Mori brought me a pair of socks, which she knitted herself with her sheep herder's hands, 2 socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as if they were 2 cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. Violent socks. My feet were 2 fish made of wool. 2 long sharks, sea blue shot through by 1 golden thread. 2 immense blackbirds, 2 cannons. My feet were honored in this way by these heavenly socks. They were so handsome. For the first time, my feet seemed to me unacceptable. Like 2 decrepit firemen unworthy of that woven fire of those glowing socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them somewhere as schoolboys keep fireflies, as learned men collect sacred texts. I resisted the mad impulse to put them in a golden cage and each day give them birdseed and pieces of pink lemon. Like explorers in the jungle who hand over the very rare green deer to the spit and eat it with remorse, I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. The moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good. when it is a matter of 2 socks made of wool in winter? All right, so some of you might be thinking like, yo, this dude wrote a whole poem about his socks. And let's kind of jump into it and think about it a little bit. I mean, just from first read, to me, this poem is about the little things in life, right? That we don't always appreciate, but are so important. Like, for example, right now, my air conditioning. I am very, very thankful to have my air conditioning in the hot summer of Vegas, right? And so he's saying he's so happy to have his socks, his warm socks in the winter. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Mama Mori bought me a pair of socks which she knitted herself with her sheep herder's hands, 2 socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as if they were 2 cases, knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin, violet socks. I'm going to go ahead here and note that this knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. So literally, right, probably they are made with goatskin. I don't know about that, but it says that Mama Mori is a sheep herder. So there might actually be goatskin in there. Twilight is not literal, right? It's hyperbole, which we talked about last week. It's an exaggeration, right? There's not actual twilight in the socks. He's making a point of how amazing they are. Violent socks, that is personification. He is giving human qualities to socks, right? They're violent. My feet were 2 fish made of wool, 2 long sharks, sea blue shot through. So my feet were, this tells us that it's a metaphor, right? He's comparing 2 things. He's comparing his feet to fish or sharks, but he's actually saying they are those things. My feet are fish, my feet are sharks. Sea blue shot through by 1 golden thread. 2 immense blackbirds, 2 cannons. So again, all metaphor, right? Comparing his socks to other things to make us realize how amazing they are. You can also hear a little bit of alliteration here. If we go back to, let's go back here to line 5. 2 socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as if they were 2 cases. You hear all the S sounds there? So that's alliteration. And if we were in class, I'd be like, why is he doing that? What does that S sound do for you? And I think for a lot of people, it's kind of a soothing sound, right? There's even alliteration in the term soothing sound. You got S's at both the beginning of both those words. But it's kind of comforting, almost like a hiss of like a fireplace is what it makes me think about. So let's go back to where we stopped. My feet were honored in this way by these heavenly socks. They were so handsome for the first time my feet seemed to me unacceptable. So again, ode poems are all about honoring something. He's saying that like his feet were honored by that pair of socks. They were almost like they should bow down to those socks. Like 2 decrepit firemen unworthy of that woven fire of those glowing socks. So he's comparing, this is a metaphor. Actually, nope, that's not a metaphor. That is a simile. Because he's using the word like. Simile compares 2 things using like or as. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them somewhere as schoolboys keep fireflies, as learned men collect sacred text. So he is, right, saying that they're so amazing that you have that temptation. Like when you get a birthday cake that's so beautiful, you almost don't want to cut into it. Or for some of you guys, shoes that you almost don't want to wear because you don't want to get them dirty. But he says, I resisted that temptation. Even though they're like fireflies, they're like sacred texts. He's comparing socks to all these kind of magical things for people. I resisted the mad impulse to put them in a golden cage and each day give them birdseed and pieces of pink melon. So here he's actually comparing them to birds, right? even though he doesn't say they're like birds, you get that idea because he's saying put them in a cage, give them pieces of birdseed and melon. He's comparing his socks to birds that like might fly away. Um, and the funny thing to me about this, right, is that socks, the great thing about socks, like socks would not be great if they're not put on your feet, right? Like a sock put into a cage on display is useless to you, right? That's not what makes socks great. And I think he's going to get into that in a little bit in the end of this poem. Like explorers in the jungle who hand over the very rare green deer to the spit and eat it with remorse. And if you don't know what remorse means like sadness and regret. Like you feel bad about it. So people are like, oh, this deer is so beautiful and amazing, but I guess we're going to have to eat it because that's why we hunted it. I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. The moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good when it is a matter of two socks made of wool in winter. So I think what he's saying here in his moral, right, is that usefulness equals beauty, right? That people want to look at things and be like, oh, that's so beautiful and lovely to look at. But he's saying, actually, beauty is twice as good if it's actually useful to you, if you get to put it on your feet and they keep you warm in winter. So he wrote this whole poem really to get this point across of like, things that are useful to you are the most beautiful things in your life. Also, I think sometimes they are the things we appreciate the least, right? Like, you know, I don't think about my air conditioning every day. I just know that it's going to turn on. But if I didn't have it, I would really be sad. And kind of, I think some of us feel the same way about school, right? You thought, oh, I was so ready to be out of school. I don't want to be sitting in school all day. And now suddenly you're like, I want to go back to school. I think a lot of you are feeling that way. A lot of people who I've talked to have told me that that's how they're feeling anyway. So, now that we are done with the poem, your assignment for this week is going to be reading a second poem called Abuelito Who. So you're going to read Abuelito Who and respond to it. And then I would love you to take a shot at writing your own ode poem. So to do this, think about some of the things in your life that you appreciate. It does not need to be something like socks. It could be a person. It could be a sport that you like playing. It could be your shoes. It could be like a fancy car. It could be like something in your life that you're really grateful for. It can be an ode to anything that you want to honor and think about how amazing it is. Try and see if you can use some alliteration if you think it fits in your poem. See if you can use any metaphors. What would you compare that thing to, right? What are some things in the world that you could compare this thing to show how great and how amazing it is? And I can't wait to read some of them. As you will notice through the rest of the week, some more grades are going in. Everything is going into your quarter 3 grade. So every now and then you might see that percentage change a little bit. It should only be going up though. I'm not putting in any negative grades. So if I'm putting something in, I am putting in a positive grade. However, if you just copy a poem off the internet and submit it to me, I'm so glad that you spent some time looking at poems on the internet. I highly encourage that. I would love for you to send me things that you read on the internet in terms of poetry. However, I'm not going to give you a grade for that, right? I'm just going to leave it blank. If you didn't write it, I'm not putting in credit for you. But any work you do right now will be used to raise up your quarter 3 grade, which is being used as your semester grade. All right, that's it for today. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. Join our video calls. I am here for you. I miss you. I love you. All right, stay safe.